Every tech class in the entire world needs a little bit of foundation and geekery as far as I'm concerned, because when I go through this class, I want you to be comfortable with a lot of the terms and terminology that I use as you progress through the class. So one of the first things that I want you to understand or know about are, if I know how to pull these things down, file formats. File formats are really simple. I mean, they sound complicated and sort of hard to understand, but really, if I have a .doc, that's a Word document. So it could be called letter.doc, and if you see that on your computer, that means it's a Word document. If I all of a sudden change this, so this says .ppt, now what do I have? I have a PowerPoint. Well, in this class, we'll talk about a lot of different file formats, especially when you get to the EPUB stuff. We will talk about EPUB, e-publications. But this is actually not just something that we're talking about where it's an electronic publication, but that's an actual file type. It's a file format. So this, that you see at the end, anything after the period here, indicates what kind of file it is. So if it's a .jpg or .jpeg, it's probably an image file. Or if it's a .png, still an image file. .html, a website file or an HTML file, something that works with hypertext markup language. But this, in a nutshell, are file formats and file types. So as long as you understand what a file type or file format is, you'll know or be able to recognize the differences. Even if the front end of the file name is exactly the same, the back end tells you what kind of file it is. The second thing that I want to take you through is user interface, or UI. UI just stands for user interface. The way that you see it, the way that it looks. And if we talk about user interface on a computer, it's the monitor that is the user interface. And we have Microsoft Windows that interfaces with us. And if we're on an iPad, we're talking about the different apps and the operating system, the iOS, the I operating system. So this right here is the way that it interfaces with the human. So when you touch it, it's the way that it interacts or interfaces. And a user interface is just the way that we communicate and are communicated with from an electronic device in almost every case. All right, so now, after we have those first two taken care of, let's take a look at cloud. We keep hearing to the cloud or cloud computing. What in the world does this mean? Well, I could draw a cute little cloud. It's going to be one of the world's ugliest clouds. But there's my cloud. And if I have what might be the most ridiculous looking smartphone or cell phone here, I can dump files into the cloud. And from there, I can use my laptop with my keyboard right here and my monitor to fetch that document as well. The cloud is a fancy term for somewhere out there in the internet. It's not here, held here on the laptop. It's not held here on the cell phone. Sometimes it syncs up with it and dumps information there, but really the majority of the information is out here in this cute little nebulous cloud. You may not know whether it's in Istanbul or Idaho, but it's out in the cloud on someone else's server, not taking up hard drive space here or here, but rather somewhere out there in the world, in the cloud. That's cloud computing at its basics. And if we take a look at the next thing here, Web 2.0. Web 2.0 is very much related to cloud computing in that it uses the cloud. Web 2.0 can be simply illustrated by saying Web 2.0 is YouTube, it is Wikipedia, it's anything out in the cloud where content is created, whether it's in web page form or if it's in a video format. Whatever it is, as long as it is publicly generated so that you or I or anybody else in this world can create the content on that web page. If we're allowed to do that and create the content, then it's considered Web 2.0 because it's a new kind of website. It's something that not the company is building the content anymore, the public is building the content. That, in a nutshell, is Web 2.0. Let's move on to Wi-Fi, data, and Bluetooth. Those are the three major ways that your iPad communicates information both in and out of itself in some respects. So most of us know what Wi-Fi is, at least we've heard of it. It stands for wireless fidelity. It's just the way that you connect wirelessly to something. So if you go into McDonald's and you want to use your smartphone, or you want to use your iPad, or even if you have a computer that is Wi-Fi enabled, you can find the McDonald's Wi-Fi SID or latch onto their Wi-Fi signal and surf around the internet for free, or pay a little bit if you're at the airport or if you're at Starbucks. That's Wi-Fi. And many of our homes now have a little wireless router in them so that we can connect wirelessly, without a wire, to the internet or to other places out there in the cloud, essentially. Data service is similar, but data service no longer relies on a Wi-Fi network signal someplace. It relies on cell towers someplace. That's my cell tower. Magical, huh? Relies on cell towers somewhere out in the world that then communicate. They beam information to and from your cell phones or your iPads. And there's even GPS, or not GPS, there's even satellites out in outer space that are all connected with this as well, where data is just floating back and forth so that you could communicate, or you could collaborate, or you could compute even out in the middle of a field, provided you get data service. All you have to do is think about your cell phone. Your cell phone doesn't necessarily have to have Wi-Fi to make a phone call. You could be just about anywhere as long as you have data service. But if you have an iPad, you can actually use your data service to do things like surf the internet, or call a friend, or Skype, or FaceTime with somebody. You can do just about anything with data, provided you have a good data connection. So these two can function pretty similarly, only this one may cost you a monthly charge, and this one you can pick up, like I said, at the airport or in the comfort of your own home. This one right here, the last one, Bluetooth, is a little bit more complex than these other two. At the same time, it's a little more simple. And it's more simple in that it actually only works if you're within a rather localized area to your iPad. So if I have a keyboard, I could set it right next to my iPad and I could wirelessly compute or type in characters and the iPad would recognize it. Or I can get one of those fancy little ear pieces out that could connect with my cell phone so I can press a button and look cool and walk around and just talk with people and people look at me like I'm weird. That is a Bluetooth connection wirelessly from my ear to my cell phone, but it has to be in close proximity, at least within a few meters at minimum. We're talking feet most of the time Bluetooth connects. Bluetooth is a really nice solid connection between things, but you have to be close at hand. And you also have to set up what's called pairing to begin with. So you can't just whip out a keyboard and start using it. You have to pair it up so that it will always recognize your iPad. After that initial pairing, however, that connection is pretty strong and pretty robust. Let's move on to the last of the geekery pieces here, HDMI. And actually, I'm going to couple that with VGA. HDMI and VGA are just ways to connect video content or output or input it out of a device. HDMI literally stands for high definition multimedia input. VGA is your standard video connection that you're going to see in a projector or you're going to see in the back of a computer. This has no audio with it. It's the M right here in high definition. We know now that it's high definition. It's really nice quality, but also it's multimedia. So it carries both a video and an audio signal. The I is just a simple interface. Remember we already talked about interface, it's just the way that it communicates. So this VGA is a way to connect just video, and this over here is both video and audio. So that's the differences between these two things. And this one, of course, is high definition. This one this one is not. That's standard definition. That's it for all the geekery talk around here. Time for you to move on and learn some more about the actual iPad.